We are officially like a week and a half away from puck drop on the inaugural season for the Utah Hockey Club. You can tell there's excitement everywhere about this team in Utah. Down here in Arizona, you can hear a lot of chatter about it. The preseason games have been fantastic so far. We got a ton to talk about on the Clean Hits Hockey Podcast today. We even have a special guest. We got some more boots on the ground guests to tell us exactly what they're seeing in training camp and what those preseason games were like. But first, we do got a little bit of we got a Yeti in the room to address. So if you were watching the preseason game on Monday night, you may have seen this graphic. And if you're not on YouTube following along, watching the show on YouTube, there was a graphic of the Los Angeles Kings logo and the Utah Hockey Club logo. And they were in some icy, dank cavern. And I don't know, this little Twitter account, Clean Hits Hockey, noticed it and said, anyone notice the frozen cave graphics for Utah Hockey Club broadcast? Yeti. I mean, that looks like a home of a Yeti to me. I don't know about you guys. Kenny, Corey, what do you guys think of that?
Well, I don't think there's going to be any outlaws in there.
No.
Chilling. It's definitely looks like a Yeti cave to me. And I everybody knows my stance on it. I'm very pro mammoth, but I've kind of warmed up to it, and I'm starting to like the idea of a crazy Yeti mascot. So I'm starting to get there. I'd still prefer if they came out of left field and said, "Boom, Utah Mammoth." Because I'd be ecstatic. But all signs are pointing there. I think even Keller accidentally slipped up the other day and was like,
Yeah.
I think we're called the Yeti next season. And then what are they gonna do to Keller? Like, hey, that's not nice. Don't do that, right? Like, all signs are pointing to it. But I love the catch by Trent. That was an amazing eye for it. Like only he would spot that. Which
of course. I mean, this guy is a manic obsessive of the Utah Hockey Club and Arizona Coyotes. So of course he's the one who found it. Corey, what do you think of it? Could it be a cave where they're unicing more mammoth bones, maybe, or does this just scream Yeti to you?
No, I mean, could be, but yeah, it looks like one more piece of the puzzle for the Yeti name. And not only did Keller let it slip, but if you go back to, I think it was the second day of the draft, Bill Armstrong said it as well. So going back as well to day one of when training camp opened, we heard the remarks from President Hockey Operations Chris Armstrong that they're just working through the legal process. They've heard the fans that what name they want, and if they can make it happen, they're going to make it happen. And we heard that on the pep rally day as well. Well, all the kids, shouting out the Yeti name. And if you think about, go ahead a generation from now, and those kids are going to be adults and they're going to be season ticket holders, and they're going to be able to say to their kids, like, hey, when I was 8-9 years old, I got to vote and pick the Yeti name, and here it is 25 years later, and they were a part of that.
Yeah. And he did mention that. It's a good point, Corey. He did mention that they were working through like trademark and copyright issues. And I mean, the elephant in the room, or the Yeti in the room, like you put it, Brad, is that,
or mammoth.
Yeah, exactly. Mammoth. Is that, Yeti Cooler is a major sponsor and affiliation with the NHL. So that could be what they're working with. But he did say it's been clear since day one what our fans want us to be called and what's been the loudest voice in the room. It's always been the Yeti. So we made a joke about it the other day. Corey said he howled after a goal scored. And so I'd love to hear his Yeti scream, because I would love to know what that sounds like. So I'm looking forward to it.
Probably something like Chewbacca or something like that. But we'll practice. We don't need to start unveiling that yet. We'll figure it out as we get some more determination if that's going to be the name. But one other item I want to talk about, if you're still learning more about the Utah Hockey Club as the team, you want to get to know the players a little bit better, make sure you're following us at cleanhitshockey.com. That's going to be where you can find all of our written content. And we have been working extra hard these past couple weeks to get you all premiered with, guess what, a player premiere. We've been doing preseason report cards on each player so you can see exactly how we thought about them last year. And what you'll see here is dropping next week, early next week. We have gone through every single player on the Utah Hockey Club, give you a little bit of tidbits about who they are, their play style, and links to all of our articles about their preseason grades of how they did last season. So keep your eyes out on that. Again, cleanhitshockey.com. Go bookmark that website and get ready, because we are going to have tons of awesome content all season long. You can also find us obviously on Twitter at Clean Hits Hockey, Instagram at Clean Hits Hockey, and YouTube at Clean Hits Hockey. That's scrolling down across the bottom of the screen there. I am your host, Brad. We got Corey, we got Kenny, and guess what? Got some more boots on the ground to tell us exactly what has been going on in training camp and preseason so far. So without further ado, we are going to bring out Brogan Houston from the Deseret. Brogan, how are you doing? You mentioned that you just got back from the rink, so you are right there seeing all the action. How's everything going?
It's going really great. I still can't believe that it's real, that there's actually a hockey team here in Salt Lake City, and that I get to cover it. That's pretty cool too to me. So yeah, it's going well. Like I said, like you mentioned, I just got back from the rink, and I was there since like 11 o'clock this morning, and yeah, they're just practicing pretty much every day. It looks like cuts are starting to roll in, so things are going. We're picking up steam here.
Awesome. Well, before we jump into some of the questions we have about just kind of what you've been seeing at preseason and during some of the games and during practices and whatnot, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your experience with hockey? We kind of heard through the grapevine that you're from Canada, made your way down to the States, and yeah, just would love to hear kind of what your background is with the sport.
Sure. Yeah. So my background is probably similar to most Canadians, where hockey is pumped into your blood right from the moment you're born. And I've never wanted to do anything that didn't involve hockey growing up. Like, as a little kid, I wanted to play hockey professionally, as everybody does. And when I got to age 14, 15, and I was still living at home playing house league hockey, I kind of realized that there was no chance I was ever going to play for any money or anything like that. And so it was kind of around that age that I started thinking about, hey, like I need to find another way to get into hockey. And so I just eventually stumbled upon a journalism program at a pretty good school, and I was like, hey, I could take that into hockey journalism. That would be pretty cool. And I've always been a good writer, at least I think. I don't know, don't want to toot my own horn too much, but writing has always been my strongest school subject, and combining that with hockey, it was just kind of perfect for me. And so I went to school, did a 4-year journalism bachelor degree at BYU Idaho in Rexburg there. And then the minute I graduated, there was all of a sudden a new NHL team to cover. So it was kind of perfect timing for me. Couldn't have asked for anything to be even different by a minute. Like, it was all just absolutely perfect. Deseret News, where I work now, was looking for a person, and I was a person that could fit that role. And so, I'm really, really glad to be here, and it's been a blast so far. I still can't believe that I get to go and talk to NHL players all day, every day. So it's cool.
Yeah, that's extremely exciting, and all of us appreciate that you're there and covering the team and showing your support and giving us all those little tidbits that we're always so hungry for. I know you just recently dropped an Ian Cole interview, an article about him, so make sure to check that out and make sure to give Brogan a follow on Twitter as well.
Curious, not only are you reporting the news, but do you see your role as kind of, we see the excitement in Utah, but there's also kind of a learning curve, right? They haven't had much hockey there before. They've had the ECHL, and when that was the AHL before that, but is almost part of your role teaching this new audience to, what hockey is all about?
I think so. And that's kind of a question of should you or should you not? And I'm trying to do that exactly. So I've actually been told mixed messages from different people that have had jobs similar to mine. Lots of people have said, yeah, keep teaching the game. And lots of people have said, don't assume that your audience doesn't know what you're talking about. So I'm kind of trying to straddle that line. And the main way that I'm doing that is, I don't know if you guys have seen my cover articles of the games so far, but after each game, I write a cover, like, here's what happened in the game kind of thing. And I've been doing it in 3 different tiers. So I'm doing a hockey for dummies tier, and then hockey for the casual fan, I think is what I'm calling it now, and then a hockey for hockey nerds or something like that. Like, it's 3 tiers like that. And so the idea is that there will be something in there for everybody. If you have never even, held a hockey stick in your life, you can still get something out of this article and find it entertaining. And if you're a complete hockey nerd like me and you've never spent 10 minutes thinking about anything other than hockey, right? Or you've never spent more than 10 minutes without thinking about hockey, then there's also something in there for you. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I have done a few basic, here's all the terms you need to know for hockey, that kind of thing. I'll probably do one on here's all the rules that you need to know. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it's a little bit of both. I think you gotta not assume that your audience is dumb for any in any hockey terms or anything like that, but certainly teach a little bit.
I imagine it's been a little surreal too. I know you reported the other day that you had an opportunity to chat with Ken Holland and what his role could be with the organization, what he was kind of doing there at training camp. Just a little bit surreal to be sitting there chatting with somebody who has 4 Stanley Cup rings on his hand.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. I was actually telling Ken I had met him previously and he had no idea who I was, obviously, because we're from the same hometown and we ran into each other, or I ran into him, I should say, at the airport one time. And so when I talked to him that day, it was probably 2 years ago, but I played hockey with his nephew, Jacob. And so we were on the same team growing up and just for a year. But yeah, so it was kind of, yeah, it was surreal talking to somebody like that, especially somebody from my hometown of Vernon, British Columbia, 50,000 people, something like that. And he's this Hall of Fame guy and he's standing there right in front of me. And it was cool. I thought it was interesting that he was wearing a Utah Hockey Club jacket. That was the interesting thing. Still no sign of him signing with the team or joining in any way, but he was interested, that's for sure.
Cool.
Wait, speaking of staff, you've probably been asked a million times, how do the players seem to be liking Utah? I'm curious what you think about the vibe around the staff members, the front office members, Bill Armstrong, and then coaching staff with Turini. To me, they seem like they're pretty intense people, but with a really laid back persona. What has been your first impressions of them? Have they been receptive, to the audience and to the media questions that you had?
Yeah, so I think from my understanding of it anyway, this is my first NHL job, but from my understanding, they're a lot more open to the media than a lot of other teams are. They know that they have a product that they need to sell, and they know that the media is one of the ways that they can kind of get their product out there, right? So they've been pretty available. Right when I started the job, I had a really long phone interview with Bill Armstrong, and I wrote an article about it, but I think that's pretty abnormal that they would give a brand new first time reporter, half an hour with the general manager on the phone. And, so that was kind of cool. And then they're always around the rink. And so, I've gotten to know them just a little bit. Today we were watching practice and Bill just came and sat in the stands with us, where we were watching practice. And so we went over there and we were just having a little conversation and that kind of thing. So they're there. They're all available to us. They're willing to answer questions to an extent. I tried to get Chris Armstrong to tell me about the Dylan Guenther extension right when Elliot Friedman tweeted it. He wouldn't give me anything. So, they're not going to throw us bones or anything like that, but they're nice guys. And yeah, I think they are very glad to be in Utah is what it seems like. So not directly from management, but from some of the people that worked for the teams, it sounded like it wasn't the most favorable situation in Arizona, as you guys can probably imagine. And so it just sounds like everybody is ready to get that whole thing behind them and, start fresh and just have all the controversy behind them, really.
Yeah. I think a fresh start is important, especially with this group, because you're right. It was uglier than ugly. It was bad here. And I know, you hear a lot of players that do praise Arizona and wish a team would be back there, but at the end of the day, they're excited about it. They're happy. And so it's refreshing to hear that everybody's receptive and willing to talk to you and that we do have boots on the ground, because it's so aggravating for us to be so far away and try to follow the team. So we appreciate everything that you do.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because I do think there's a lot of kind of character building with what maybe some of the players have kind of gone through here in Arizona. I think obviously when you hear them talk about it, there's still a lot of love and fond memories too, but I'm just sure it's like they feel like they've paid their dues now and they're getting that reward. They're going to that preseason game that's nearly sold out, and the crowd sounded extremely loud. It sounded pretty electric in there. Were you at that game, and What was that like? Just kind of watching it all unfold.
Yeah, one of my colleagues, Cole Bagley at the KSL, he kind of got roasted on Twitter, and we were talking about it this morning. He got roasted on Twitter for calling that a playoff atmosphere. Let it be known that that was a playoff atmosphere, you guys. I've been watching hockey my entire life, and the cameras did not do it justice. The microphones in the arena, I recorded a video myself. You could barely even hear the crowd. I think there's some noise cancellation there or something. Like there was something going on there because you could not hear yourself think in there. It was so loud. And with that metal roof and everything, the sound just like echoes back in your face. And it was crazy. Especially the biggest thing was when there was that goal, then the two fights, then the other goal. And I remember when Liam O'Brien, Spicy Tuna, he dropped the gloves and he, pounds his guy. And then he afterwards raises his hands. He's like, let's go. Like that was the loudest thing I've ever heard, you guys. So lay off Cole there. He's a good guy. And that was playoff hockey, I'm telling you guys. Playoffs in the preseason. The players seem to agree too. We've talked to them a little bit about it. And everybody is astounded at how electric that really was.
Is it
Are you seeing much
steep?
of... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, is it because it's so steep that it's so loud? Like that's what I've heard is that it's like one of the steepest arenas that you could play in. So I'm excited to get there, but I'm just curious to know.
Yeah, I know pretty much nothing about physics and math and sound dynamics and anything like that, but I would assume that that's correct. Yeah, what I've heard is that the tin roof is the big thing because it's like corrugated metal. And you can see it, like there's no ceiling or anything. It's just that metal, and then I'm sure there's stuff beyond that, but it really like bounces down, is what they say.
Yeah, I'll take it down a little memory lane story here. And I used to play in a lot of stupid, loud, heavy bands back in my day, and there was a quote unquote venue that was essentially a storage unit with a metal roof, and it was so piercingly loud in there. So I can only imagine what that's like when it's an actual arena and like that size of a venue. I can't wait to get there. It's something I'm looking forward to, and just taking it all in and just experiencing that, because that's one of the few things we keep on hearing is just how intimidating it can be because of how loud it is. And then you add the altitude on top of that, and I mean, outside of Vegas, you got to wonder if they're going to have the best home ice advantage in the league.
Yeah. Oh, it'll be something for sure. Are you guys coming to a game anytime soon?
Oh yeah, for sure. We're all kind of coordinating and trying to figure out the best time to get out there. But yeah.
All right.
Are you seeing much of that enthusiasm outside of the rink, or is it mostly concentrated, to the games, to the training camp, things like that?
That's a really good question because I'm new to Utah. I've been here for a month and a half, 2 months, something like that. So all of the people that I know are pretty much all hockey people. So I don't really know. I go to church here, and every now and then people will ask me what I do, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I cover hockey and stuff. And they'll be like, oh yeah, we've heard they're renovating downtown, or we've heard that the name of the team might be this or that. So it seems like I probably am not the person to ask about this, but from my experience, it seems like everybody's aware of what's going on. Lots and lots of people are excited for it, but that's about as much as I know, really.
Yeah. You're familiar with hockey. Like, as you said, you've been around it your entire life. I know that there's people that on the roster that we've got eyes on, right? The big names, the Coolies, the Guenthers, etc. I'm curious, with the amount of hockey you've watched regarding this team the last few weeks here, is there anybody that's sticking out to you that you personally see and say, hey, this is a guy you guys got to look out for? Maybe someone that's not in the headlines every day?
Yeah, I've got two that are immediately come to mind. One is Maximilian Zuber, and I think he got into a couple of games last season at the end there. The other one is Vladislav Kolyachuk, who also got into a bunch of games last year. Both of those guys are the real deal. And I'll throw Julian Lutz into there too. He's not going to be in the NHL within the next year or two, maybe next year, a couple of games, that kind of thing. But he's right there as well. So the three of those guys are dynamic. I was watching Lutz today. They were doing like a speed skating drill. I don't know if you've seen the practice rink, but it's got like a hockey rink in the middle and then a speed skating track on the outside. And so they were doing like speed skating drills today with all the cameras out there to test their speed. And Lutz was creaming everybody. It was nuts how fast that guy is. And I've talked previously about how he is like an elite playmaker. Kind of reminds me of Matthias Michelli kind of thing, the way that he makes So I'll put him up there. And then, Kolyachnik and Zuber, they both seem as good offensively as they are defensively. Kolyachnik scored those 4 points in 4 games at the end of the season as a defenseman, and having hardly played a game in the NHL. I think he might have played like half the season before that or something. But both of those guys, give them shots to actually make the team. Like probably Kolyachnik over Zuber, but both of those guys, I'm sure, will be in the NHL and will be full-time guys within the next couple of years here.
I've been a big Coley stan over here. I've been really kind of rooting for him to kind of solidify his spot. And I thought last season at the end, when he was getting those couple games in before the season ended, it was the best games I had seen him play. You could see the maturing of his offensive game. His shot had gotten a lot better. It just almost seemed night and day of the player that we saw kind of before, and when he would kind of creep in and out of the roster. But I'm very excited about him. Zuber is somebody that I'm still trying to get my eyes on a little bit more. I think we're going to do some road trips down to Tucson to do some reporting on the road runners. So I'm sure we'll be getting a lot more in-person viewings of him too, but that's all.
So you guys can be my boots on the ground there in Tucson.
There you go.
Boots on the ground here. There you go. It's a good trade.
It's go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's just refreshing to hear, because those are 3 guys that we've kind of pinpointed as like bubble guys. First call-ups, first guys in line. We did see a taste of them. Zuber has been mentioned by Bill Armstrong multiple times in multiple interviews. So that's really refreshing. I myself haven't seen enough of him yet either, but he has been a guy that I've had my finger on the pulse, just kind of keeping keeping track of his progress, because you see it all the time in the NHL. Like we had one with Connor Garland, who was a Coyotes player, and he capitalized on getting called up because he was injured. And of course, he's a Vancouver guy now, so you might have heard the name. So it'll be nice to see if you never want to ask for injuries, but they do happen. It'll be nice to see some of these guys get a chance to run with it.
And going along with that theme of like guys that should probably make this team or whatever, Kailer Yamamoto is going to make this team. I would bet my left arm on it. Like I talked to Bear today, Andre Tourigny, about him, and he had nothing but good things to say about him. Sound like, I think Bear's quote, I'll have to look it up directly. I haven't transcribed that interview yet, but it was something to the effect of, this is an NHL player, this is not an AHL player. So if he doesn't make the team out of camp, I'll be floored. He's been playing, or I guess for the one game that he's played, he played on the power play, the penalty kill. He looked good on both. He already seems to have chemistry with Carconi there and everybody. So I would be floored if he did not make the team.
I saw some lines today. He was on the first power play unit, and if he was not going to make this team, it doesn't make any sense to have him practicing on the top power play unit and then cut him tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
And there might be an opportunity.
Yeah, he was back on the power play again today.
Yeah, and there could be an opportunity to keep him now with Nick Bukestad unlikely to start the season opener. Yamamoto was just in camp on a PTO, so still needs a contract. They still have 5 contract slots left, and they could keep him. I mean, that's probably not the best news for Josh Doan in terms of his hopes of making the NHL, but they can always keep Yamamoto, and then Josh Doan goes down to Tucson, and then reevaluate and see where things are in a couple of months.
Yeah,
and that's just it. Like Josh Doan, he's a great kid. I do think he's a little slow in terms of skating compared to some of these other guys. Like he's just not the greatest skater, and not that he's bad or anything, but there's another level that he needs to get to before he can probably really, really play in the NHL. He looked really good for that little stint at the end of the year there. But I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to let him work with the skills coaches for a little bit, and he can go up and down as much as they want him to. And I think they probably will utilize that. They did it with Dylan Guenther last year. They'll probably do it with him this year. And I'm sure he'll get at least half a season of NHL games too.
Yeah, just the fact that Dylan's on a 2-way deal, that's really working against his favor, right? And then I guess the other part that fits into that is you can only play 12 forwards. Do you think Spicy Tuna, Liam O'Brien, is going to play in that season opener? And if he plays, somebody's got to come out of the lineup.
Yeah, I think he's got to be there. One thing that we were talking about today, just among the media that was there, was what names do people in Utah know if they're not hockey fans? And the ones that we came up with were TG Ginla and Spicy Tuna. They don't know Liam O'Brien. They know Spicy Tuna. Let's be honest. If they want to sell hockey in Utah, they're going to keep him in the lineup. There's a reason that with those jerseys that they're going to be selling, I'm sure you guys saw the news that the names will be a couple of these top guys and Spicy Tuna. And that's not a mistake. They're not putting in a fourth liner because he's a fourth liner or anything like that. They have a brand to keep up. Yeah. I think he'll be in there more often than not.
He's a glue guy in the locker room too. He's loved by his teammates. So I definitely agree. I think he's in the opening night roster. I mean, he's probably going to drop the gloves for a shift. He's out there just to kind of pump him up again. I mean, he did his trial run during preseason. That's his role. I mean, he was just on Spittin' Chicklets, and he was talking about how he's a big WWE fan, and so he knows how to get the crowd going. So I could definitely see him, on October 8th, just pumping up the crowd and get it. That's a guaranteed win, right? Like, we have to put money on that. Brad, you're the expert.
I'm sure
it's got to be a guaranteed.
Oh
win.
Yeah. Puck line. They're winning by 2 at least.
Yeah, exactly. So
absolutely. No, and I think there were some really good points there, and something to consider when we're thinking about roster construction, because I know for maybe newer Utah fans here, Josh Doan, there's a lot of hype there. He's obviously the son of Arizona Coyotes long-term captain, ended the season in a phenomenal kind of magical way. But because of that two-way contract and because of what he can learn, I got to see him play at ASU quite a bit, and I would have to agree his skating's a little deceptive, but there's room for growth. There's room for him to fill out his frame as well. And there's no rush here. Mm-hmm. The Roadrunners could be a very, very good team. And if he is on that top line and he is kind of carrying that team, that is great development. So seeing a guy like Yamamoto get brought in at training camp, I think we all kind of thought he was mostly going to be there just to kind of make everything a little bit more competitive. But now you're starting to see him getting those special team minutes. And yeah, if he makes the roster, that should be really interesting. Now are we sitting Carcone more often and Liam O'Brien, or how is that going to work? I wonder, but it's something to kind of keep your eyes on. Another thing to think about, though, is Nick Bukestad's out. John Marino is now day to day, they're saying. So you can see where these injuries can really start to pile up very quickly. Depth is always a good thing. And as Arizona Coyotes fans, I think we all know how much it can sting when you don't have that. So I'm glad that you pointed that out, kind of seeing people coming up, taking those spots, taking those opportunities and making the most of it. And speaking of injuries and the other side of that, Tej makes his debut today at practice. How did the kid look?
Yeah, so actually I got to correct you. He was there yesterday in practice, but it was after everybody had already left. And so nobody, we didn't even know he was out there. So yeah, he looks good though. His shot is just something else. And that's the big thing with him. He was still taking it a little easy, I think. Like, he's still recovering. I talked to him after practice, and his quote was that he's not 100%, but he's close. And so I think he's just trying to get back into the swing of things. And that's where he's at right now. So not a ton to report yet, but he's super excited to be here, super excited to get going. Yeah, he said that. So he's wearing number 12 right now. I don't know if that's like super public knowledge yet, but he's wearing number 12, which obviously was his dad, Jerome McGinley's number. So I asked him about that, and he said that he usually wears number 11 like he does in Kelowna. But Dylan Guenther wears that here. And so they just gave him 12, apparently. That's what he told us. So he said not to assume anything and not to assume that he would wear that in the NHL if he makes it there. But, yeah, that's what I got on Tej so far. Talked to him for probably 5 minutes, and he seems like he's just kind of getting back into the swing of things. And I tried to get him to tell me his goals for like how many goals he's going to score this season, and he wouldn't even go there. So
that's a good sign.
Yeah. I told him over under 60, and he was laughed. So.
Any sense from camp on when we could see, if you want to call it the second wave of cuts? I know there was two today, two of the guys, they were on PTOs, Reggie Newman and Kyle Grinkovic, he got released as well. Any sense on when we could see the next ones? And I think it is also important to emphasize to Utah fans who are new to hockey, don't be surprised if Cole Baudouin and Owen Allaire get cut early despite having good camps. The likeliness is they're not going to make the final roster, and the sooner they get back to the junior team, Sue and Barry, that's better for them long term.
Yeah, so I don't know for sure. I haven't actually asked the question, but what I do know is that right now they're practicing in 2 different groups, Group A, Group B. Group A is all the NHL players and a few kind of AHL elite kind of guys. Cole Baudouin's in that group as well. And then Group B is pretty much the guys that aren't expected to make the team in any realm. Now, that's happening right now. It's been happening this whole time. On Sunday, it switches to one group. So I'm sure by Sunday, we'll have a whole bunch of cuts. Maybe they all come at once. Maybe they come 2 or 3 guys at a time like we saw this morning.
That makes sense. They play Friday, and then I don't know if they play Saturday or Sunday, but you could do a big cut after those games then.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's Friday and Sunday.
Yeah, and they started camp with 64, so if you can cut that down to low 30s, and you can get a lot closer to that final 23 number.
Exactly, yeah. And this morning, the A group actually had a ton of the B players in it, so I'd assume that those guys are probably the ones that are going to stay in this upper group.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But now, you mentioned all the CHL guys. They're probably going back to their teams. I would be surprised if they didn't.
Yep, and that's the big point that we want to make too, is that it's unlike kind of NFL when you watch those training camp shows like Hard Knocks and whatnot, and you see these guys get cut, and a lot of times that means they have to go kind of work out off season. Maybe they go to the Canadian Football League. Maybe they find different ways to continue their training and whatnot, and then they hope to make the training camp the following year and potentially make a team that way. This is very different. The players are drafted by the team for the most part, unless they are on those tryouts, the PTOs like Yamamoto is, and they are still kind of in the different farm sections within the team's kind of realm for being able to continue to have their contract rights. So Corey wrote a great article that kind of highlights the different versions of what that can look like throughout different leagues, and we'll be expanding on that a little bit more. But that doesn't mean that Baudouin gets cut and he's just not part of the team anymore. That just means he's going to go back to his Canadian Hockey League team, and next year we'll have another opportunity at camp to impress.
And
yeah, exactly.
And important to know that most of these players expect it, especially the CHL guys. A lot of the times that's the traditional path, unless you're like a first overall pick or a generational talent, or the team that you're joining doesn't have a lot of depth. So if you do see Cole Baudouin get cut, or the likes of them, it's not something that they're going to be disgruntled about. This is like, hey, par for the course. There's always outliers, but just something to keep in mind. Like basically what Brad said, if you get cut, it's not that deep as the NFL Hard Knocks, where you see guys crying and scrambling around for a job.
Mm-hmm. I could see them hanging on to TJ Ginla a little bit longer than Cole Baudouin, just so their own doctors can keep an eye on him. I don't think he's going to play in the NHL this year. But I mean, OHL season starts this Friday, so those 2 OHL guys, Cole and Owen, will be cut probably this weekend, and then they can go back to their teams. They're big players on their teams, and those teams definitely want them back.
Yep. Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Tej play this weekend as well. That's what it sounded like it was going towards.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that's going to be really exciting to look forward to. So make sure you got your Utah Hockey Club SEG account ordered so you can kind of watch those preseason games, especially if Tej is making his debut this weekend. That's exciting.
Yeah. Don't take that as hard news, but that was the sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't hold you to it like all those.
Yeah.
We won't hang you out to dry like all those people with Cole.
Yeah. Oh, that was brutal. I felt bad for him, but he got 1 million views on it, so that was good.
Yeah.
Good. Awesome. Any other notes that really you want to kind of highlight from preseason and training camp so far? Anything else that we should be all looking forward to, or?
Not specifically. Just guys seem happy. Like, with the exception of one guy, and I probably shouldn't say who, but seems like everybody wants to be there, and it just seems like everybody is ready to play in a bigger building and ready to have the fans, really, really be excited to have them there. Not that they weren't in Arizona, but it's this new shiny toy that Utahns have here, and I think they're excited for that. And then it sounds like as far as like the player experience goes, everything here is going to be up a tier as well. It sounds like, and I don't know Morello at all, but sounds like everything was a little second tier in that organization, and it's going up a tier here. So everybody just seems excited to be here and everything.
Yeah, he may not be missing much not knowing that guy.
Just the fact on that behind the scenes show, the players are blown away that they now have access to an espresso machine is just wild. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know what they had for coffee in Arizona, but you couldn't shell out a couple $100 for a machine.
Yeah, seriously. One thing that I don't know if this is super public either, but one of the guys that worked for the team last year and now works for Utah this year, he showed me a video of the walk from the Mullet Arena dressing room to the ice surface, because they had to build like a satellite dressing room, I guess, for the players to sit in out there. The walkway between that didn't have a proper roof. I guess it was some type of tarp or something like that. So he showed me a video of a day that it was raining during an NHL game, and it's just like pouring rain out of the ceiling, and these NHL guys are walking through there. And so that's the kind of thing that I think they're really excited to not have to go through anymore. Not that that's like, I know lots of people have to go through much harder things than that, but these guys are playing in the NHL. There's a certain standard that they expect.
For sure. Maybe they were just trying to get him ready for that dank Yeti cave, right? That sounds accurate. So, you're right, man. I mean, I have such a soft spot for the Coyotes. We all do. So it's heartbreaking to hear that the players had to go through that, and that's kind of what our team was reduced to. But now this is our team, and we're super excited to have you there and to give us a little insight. I had one more quick question, and I don't mean to cut anybody off, but I'm curious about goaltending. Goaltending is something that can make or break our team. Sorry about that. So the Ingram seems like the guy that will be the guy that, I mean, the guy, right? Sorry, I got a little discombobulated there in my own thoughts. But I'm curious to know about the depth of goaltending. Like, we saw Villalta have a strong period, the third period in that first preseason home game. What are your thoughts on the goaltending depth?
Yeah, it seems like they like all four guys really. I'll add Jackson Stauber into there as well. And I believe he played half a season or something in Chicago. Like, he played some games in Chicago. And so they've got four guys that are probably competing for a spot somewhere, right? I don't think Anson Thornton is in that race. I think he'll probably be the third guy in the AHL, that kind of thing. But yeah, Villalta and Stauber, and then those two NHL guys, Vimelka and Ingram, just seems like they're all competitive. They're all good goalies. If one of them gets hurt, any of the others can, play NHL games, and they'll probably be just fine. So yeah, that's really all I know. I'm not a goaltending guru. It's kind of a separate sport almost. Like I don't know all that much about it. What I do know is that they like all those guys and they all seem good. Ingram had that really big save the other night that got the fans on their feet on the 2-on-1. So my honest answer is I don't really know, but it seems like they like everybody.
Awesome.
Cool. Thank you for that, man.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining the show, giving us all that insight. That's fantastic. We'll definitely be in touch. Hopefully we can bring you on again and enjoy the rest of training camp and the big games coming up. And we can't wait to hear what you see. And October 8th can't come soon enough. But I think we're
Before I go, I have to say one thing. I have to express my love for Coyotes fans and for the greatest jersey, or not the greatest, but a elite jersey that they had. And I'm not talking about the Kachina. I'm talking about the one before that. That's my hot take for the day.
Wow, the Howling Head.
The Howling Coyote?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. That's my hot take for the day.
Right. I didn't hate that jersey. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, when I was a little kid, I'd play NHL 2K9, and I loved the Coyotes because they had that jersey. So, back in the Kyle Turris days. So that's my plug for the day. Is that was the best Coyotes jersey ever.
Awesome. Wow! All right. Well, that is a hot take, but I appreciate hearing it too. And Again, awesome having you on the show, Brogan. And make sure you're checking him out for the Deseret news. Make sure you check out that Ian Cole article and everything he's going to be releasing as we get ready for the inaugural puck drop on October 8th. And we'll catch you soon, Brogan. Thanks again.
Okay, thanks. You too.
Well, again, thank you so much for Brogan Houston for joining us today. Make sure you're checking all of his articles and coverage on the Utah Hockey Club out on the Deseret News. We got some more things to talk about, though. This has been an exciting week. I mean, I touched down in LA this weekend, thought I was going to have all this time off, have a nice little vacation. And no, Dylan Guenther signs for 8 years at $7.14 million, a mega deal that's as long as you can sign players in this current CBA is an 8-year term. So they maxed that out. That buys pretty much his prime years, and it's very exciting. Now, it is a risk. We have not seen him play a full NHL season yet. He was on pace to have 30 plus goals last season had he did play at that performance for a full 82 games, but obviously we have not seen that yet. So this is one of those strategies we're starting to see more and more GMs do. You just saw it happen in Montreal with Slavkovsky, locking him up for the max term. And now we're seeing it again with another young kid who probably hasn't hit his ceiling. And gosh, this week it feels like everybody is giving his praises. So, Corey, Kenny, what are some of your initial reactions for Dylan Guenther's big payday?
I think it's a smart gamble. I mean, the reaction has been extremely mixed, right? But in just to Brad's point there, it's a very common thing to do, especially with young, promising players. And you always have to bet on talent. And he has shown, even in small doses, that he's a talented guy. Had instant chemistry with Cooley, who's also going to potentially be looking at a deal very similar to this in the near future, if not more. And it's something that it's like a would you rather be, right? Would you rather, kind of bridge this guy and, sign him for a couple years and all of a sudden he pops off just like they bet he would, obviously with this big contract, and then have to deal with a much, much higher amount annually? Or would you rather take the risk of like, hey, we know that we're locking him in at a pretty hefty price right now. He's going to be one of our highest paid players on the team. But we know with the cap going up in just a few years, it's going to be looked at as an extremely fair deal for what he's projected to put up. So at the end of the day, you'd want to be, I'd say, on the side of locking up a young talent before he explodes into what they really think he's going to be and what we all here think he's going to be.
Yeah, I think it really just boils down to a couple of things. Like Kenny said, the cap's going up. They've finally got all the escrow paid off, or I think it's very close, if it's not done already, from the COVID years. So, because it was a flat cap for a while, right? And that's where Bill Armstrong really took advantage, was able to bring in picks and bad contracts and things like that. But it's up to $88 million this year. In the next 2-3 years, it's probably going to crack $100 million. And, if you're Dylan Guenther and you're negotiating with a $100 million cap, there's a lot more money available. The risk is low because if he doesn't work out, he's still going to be under 25 in a couple of years, where if you have to do a buyout, if they're under age 25, it's only a third of the contract rather than 2/3. So it's a really cheap hit against the cap. And I think just the other piece on Dylan Guenther is Bill Armstrong always talks about winners. He talks about even himself as a winner, 3-time winner, won the Memorial Cup as a player in Oshawa, won, I think it was a Calder Cup in, let's say, Providence. That I don't know if it was Providence or maybe it was Lowell when he was coaching, and then the Stanley Cup there in St. Louis. And then Dylan Guenther is a winner as well. He got the Memorial Cup, not the Memorial Cup. He got the Rookie of the Year when he was in the WHL. He had a WHL championship in Edmonton. He had a WHL championship in Seattle. He had a gold medal at the World Juniors. He had the OT winner for that game as well. So he's a winner. He's a perennial. I think minimum 30, and I think he's going to hit 30 this year, and I think he can crack 40 fairly regularly as well.
Yeah, and we were kind of talking about this before we hit the record button, went live with the show, but I this is the type of contract that I'm not going to be concerned about if he doesn't live up to it this year. He's one of those players, you see the skill set, as long as he can continue to improve, be more consistent with that skill set, it's going to translate. We've already seen it translate. We have guys like Bedard talking about him having one of the best shots in the league. I think the quote was, and gosh, correct me if I'm wrong, that only Matthews has a better shot than him. Obviously, this is Bedard saying it, so he's probably not counting and not giving himself enough credit there as well. But this is potentially an elite.
Keller, but the point still stands.
Thank you. Yes. But there's players who do kind of slump a little bit as they're working their way in the league. So I don't know, maybe it's Cooley in his second full season. Maybe he just has more players that know what to expect from him, have more video on him. Maybe his playmaking just isn't as sharp because of that, which kind of affects Dylan Guenther's totals, or maybe the full season wears on Guenther and we don't quite see him eclipse into what we're all hoping to see. But Clayton Keller is the perfect example of this. After he got his payday, his point totals went down for a couple seasons. You could say that was from maybe the coaching, the system he was in, kind of where that team was at that point. There was a lot of transition there, a lot of retool. But now we got a guy who's putting up 80 points, 30 goals, and I think he's worth every penny of that contract, and his contract, it looks like one of the better ones in the league. So again, this is a long play here. This is not a contract that I'd be worried about if he doesn't quite live up to it. And if he does, holy cow, watch out. That's going to be one of those contracts people point at and say it's worth taking the risk to get your guys locked up long-term like that. And this is going to help this team as the cap keeps on raising, be able to afford guys like Tease, Simashev, Daniil Boot, as they all kind of transition and make the league, if they are all able to kind of produce the kind of clips that we want to see them hit as they start making the team.
Yeah. And I think one other important piece that we covered before we hit record is that these are the kind of contracts that get scrutinized because they're like, oh, they never, they haven't even played a full season yet. Like, what's going on? These are the kind of contracts that you want to take a bet on versus, you see what happens in NHL, NFL, NBA free agency, where you hand a guy a long-term contract with a boatload of money, and they fizzle out after 2 years, right? This is a much safer bet to bet on a young person who still has yet to show everything that they can do. So I still kind of find it odd that it was so heavily scrutinized by one side, because those are the same people that are praising these, signing a 28-year-old free agent to a 7-year deal.
Yep, no, absolutely. I mean, I really think sky's the limit for this kid too. There's old reports of when we were able to draft him that Andre Tournier was quote unquote standing on the table dancing. He has a lot of experience with him. This was a kid that was ranked in the top 5, top 3 in some of those preseason rankings for the 2021 draft. And again, every time I watch the kid, he looks like he's always one of the most dangerous people on the ice. The shot's phenomenal. The speed's phenomenal, but there's so much more to his game. There's playmaking element to it. Guentzel is a great comparable to me. There's even like a little bit of Max Pacioretty to his game, because this is a big kid and he's going to fill out his frame more. And there's leadership qualities that apparently the team is seeing more in training camp, and it's coming out more. This is one of those kids that I'm just extremely excited about. The whole team should be, and this whole fan base should be as well.
He even looks like Max Pacioretty. He looks like his little brother.
He does.
I think, though, this is just the start. Exactly. This is just what's going to happen in Utah. I think this is just the start. Logan Cooley is eligible for an extension July 1st, and I think he'll get a similar deal. He'll get an 8-year extension. And that's really the way to do it, because if you wait to the last minute and you team like what Toronto did with their big three, with Nylander, Marner, and Matthews, and you give them all these $10, $11 million contracts, then all of a sudden you're out of money and you got to fill up the rest of the team with $40, $50 million, and it becomes much more difficult to win.
Yeah, and I have no problem with doing it now as the cap keeps on rising. this could easily be kind of the going rate of a second liner for most teams in a couple of years here as the cap keeps on increasing. And again, there's so much stacking of prospects that general manager Bill Armstrong has done for this team that I feel like kind of taking those risks on the contracts the only way that you're going to be able to potentially afford everybody if they start to hit their ceilings. One other thought about this contract is he's so young. If this is something where it's starting to not work out for maybe multiple seasons, it's going to be the type of contract that another team is going to be willing to take the risk on. I guarantee it that it's going to be something where he'll still be a tradable asset. This is not going to be something where it's considered one of the worst contracts in the league and everybody laughs about how he got paid so early into his career. This is going to be the type of player that someone goes, hey, you know what? We need some more talent. Let's give this kid a shot.
Yeah.
So
this guy's going to be a game breaker. We saw how exciting and the atmosphere at the Delta Center was for that first preseason game. Just wait until mid-season when Guenther's screaming down the wing and making an insane shot that I would say 85% of the NHL players cannot do. So just kind of keep an eye on that. It's going to be crazy. It's an excellent bet, and I didn't bat an eye at it. I'm like, yep, saw that coming a mile away.
Same.
So don't worry about it, guys. It's going to work out, promise you.
Yep. Just cover your ears if anybody's telling you it's a bad one. Well, I think that's all we have for today's show. Don't forget to find us at cleanhitshockey.com. That is where you're going to find all of our written content. We put about 3 to 4 articles out a week. We're going to have kind of a whole lineup week to week throughout the season. Different types of articles. We'll be covering players. Trent's going to be giving us prospect updates because he is the guy who watches all the KHL games, all the junior games as well. We'll be having some coverage of the Tucson Roadrunners. We're going to be doing some betting articles and then, of course, just general team information and kind of our thoughts on the players and how the team are doing throughout the season. We have a killer Instagram account where Kenny is going to be breaking down some key plays from every game. That is Instagram.com/cleanhitshockey. Of course, you can find us on YouTube at Clean Hits Hockey as well. And of course, all your favorite podcasting places like Apple and Spotify as well. And don't forget, we do have the whole Utah Hockey Club player premiere coming out next week, where we will be showing you all of the players with tidbits of information and our preseason rankings for all of them. If you want to read even more about them, that should be dropping early next week to get you all prepared for that October 8th puck drop. So get ready for that. Otherwise, boys, I just can't believe we're here. It's almost time. That preseason game, borderline felt that was the most NHL feeling preseason game I think I've seen for all the years following the Coyotes. There's going to be more players. You heard Brogan mention that Tej may be playing this weekend. There's going to be a lot more of exciting tidbits to kind of soak in during these last couple preseason games. And then October 8th is going to be right around the corner. So Any final thoughts from you guys?
Nope. I'll be here cheering on with my sign. So go Utah. Go Utah. It's not on the wall, as you can see. But I'm super pumped. I can't wait for it. So that was awesome. Great show, guys. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, just echo the same thoughts and just excited for Friday, next preseason game. And I don't know if I've ever been excited to watch a preseason hockey game before, but it's 2 days away and I'm excited to watch it.
Yep, I remember like maybe when Keller was breaking on to the team, those preseason games were exciting, but it was like, oh, he's playing with like, oh gosh, some fourth liner scrub that like
Mark Arcabello and Rob Klinkhammer.
There you go.
Colonel Klink.
Jeez. And it's like, well, I don't even know what this means, but
or the Turris and Bodker days,
So lots of excitement on this team, and I can't wait to watch more. So, all right, catch us later. We'll have new episodes coming out soon. Make sure you're giving us a like, subscribe, follow, comment, however you want to engage with us. We love engaging with you too. Let's make this community grow, and let's have some fun watching some preseason hockey this weekend. We'll catch you all later. Adios.
minute now. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change.